I tell you. Nothing feels better than being on summer vacation, not having anything to worry about, nothing to do. I can just relax and take it easy. Wait a minute. Wasn't there something that I was supposed to do that I promised to do a while back? And it's been kind of a long time, I think. Oh God. How long has it been? Shit. I had a more intricate intro in mind, but, blah, blah, blah. Here's Grim Fandango. It's been a long time, guys, but I'm finally back on your screen in full form.
I have returned.
Call the president,
hide your kids, hide your wife,
and pull up a chair. Welcome to Gregorious Views, and welcome back if this isn't your first time, where all nerds that love video games and movies are welcome. Except you. Yeah, you. In the back. Yeah, I see you. Yes, you. Go on. Get. Go on. Yeah, that's right. Go on. Yeah, go on. Get out. Okay. Today, finally, after all the waiting and mulling over and all, I know you've all been waiting with bated breath, right? Right? So we're going to be looking at one of my all-time favorite video games, one that I remember playing on an old compact laptop in, like, 1999. In case it wasn't apparent on the cover image to the video, or you missed my lovely intro. Grim Fandango. Fandango. Fandango?
Scaramouche, will you do the fandango?
Anyway, yes, Grim Fandango. But before I begin, you know the drill if you've watched my other videos, so if you enjoy this sort of thing, or if you're really interested in sadomasochism, then please consider liking and subscribing. Thanks. Allow me to take you back in time. I talked a bit about my gaming history, just a little bit, in my video on Max Payne. Now, it may have been hard to hear because my microphone at the time sucked.
Testing, testing, testing. Good evening, ladies and... Concert tonight.
But I am a very well-versed gamer and have played quite a lot and still do. Even though I never have time to play anything anymore because job take time. Ah! One of my favorite genres has always been adventure games. What are those? Well, games that focus on dialogue and puzzle solving, and in the case of this one and many others, you can't really die or fail. So, low stakes. Anyway, many of my favorites of this genre are all tied together under one flag, LucasArts. Now, since I am a teacher, allow me to give you a brief history lesson, even though I teach English. George Lucas. Yeah, that one. You all know him mainly as the guy who created Star Wars and Indiana Jones before selling them to the mouse-eared overlord and leaving his associate, Kathleen Kennedy, to ride on his coattails and mostly run Star Wars into the ground. Well, until Disney Plus's shows mostly helped salvage that franchise. We're still getting a fifth Indiana Jones, you know, where Indy is on the search for the Fountain of Youth or free health care for the elderly. I don't know.
What a dick.
Anyway, Lucas. He founded Lucasfilm as well as Industrial Light and Magic and Skywalker Sound in the 70s, and this was all before he gave us the cultural zeitgeist in a galaxy far, far away. Yeah, people forget how much Lucas contributed to film as we know it today. Through these, he helped give us some of the greatest blockbusters and visual effects we ever had, and also, well, some of the worst lines ever recorded in films, too.
I don't like sand. It's coarse and rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere.
Oh, you're so cool, Brewster!
Yeah, he's not a great dialogue writer. Regardless, he wanted to branch out into other mediums, and gaming became a new frontier, which led to Lucas creating the Lucasfilm Computer Division in 1979. Part of this group branched off and became Pixar, you know. And this division eventually became LucasArts officially in 1990 and lasted until 2021, where it became Lucasfilm Games. Anyway, LucasArts, while it was involved with a lot of games such as anything Star Wars related and even Zombies Ate My Neighbors, it also came to be known for its influential adventure games that utilized the Scum engine for its dialogue and environments, and iMuse for its synchronization of music and events happening on screen. All of this was pioneered by such talents in the gaming world as Ron Gilbert, Dave Grossman, and for this video, Tim Schafer. Now, who is Tim Schafer? Well, think of him a little bit like the Tim Burton of the gaming world, except more heavy metal and less emo, less weird hair, less dark circles under the eyes. You get my drift. Basically, if you took Tim Burton and hooked him up with Jack Black and made a weird baby, that'd be Tim Schafer. Coincidentally, Jack Black has been involved in a number of Schafer's later projects. Anyway, he brought a unique flavor and sense of humor to LucasArts games, co-designing the classic Day of the Tentacle, the sequel to the progenitor of the Scum engine, Maniac Mansion, and designing one of my favorites, Full Throttle. Today, Schafer's known as the head of Double Fine and responsible for the excellent Psychonauts games, but his first foray into a 3D adventure game was Grim Fandango. Sadly, Grim Fandango has something of a slightly sullied reputation. No, it won awards and it was critically acclaimed, but it just didn't sell well, so LucasArts dubbed it a failure. And it, along with another non-LucasArts adventure game that I consider to be one of my absolute favorites and might do a video of it on my channel at some point, The Last Express, both developed reputations as games that led to the decline and fall of the adventure game genre for roughly 10 years. Yeah. But does it deserve to have that label? Absolutely not, as you'll hopefully see by the end. There's a reason this is one of my favorites and is probably my wife's favorite adventure game. She pushed me to do this one after all. Alright, history lessons over. So, in this video, I'm playing the PS4 remaster with the polished graphics. I honestly prefer it. Plus, switching it to the original look, which you can do, reminds me too much of how it played originally. Remember that compact laptop I mentioned earlier? Yeah, Grim Fandango in the late 90s was too powerful for it. My, how times change. Okay, now that I've returned from my hiatus, I've decided to shake up the formula of how I do these videos just a little bit. So instead of giving you, the viewer, a mere plot summary, I instead am going to basically walk you, the viewer, through the story and stop to talk about things here and there that interest me. So, before I start, spoilers ahead, but you, the viewer, knew that already. Our story begins in the Land of the Dead, also known as the 8th Underworld. What Underworlds 1 through 7 are, I don't know and haven't researched, but if anyone does know, let me know in the comments. Anyway, when people die, they become papier-mâché skeletons, itself a horrifying thought, and are confronted by a Reaper, which it turns out isn't death incarnate, but instead a salesman from the Department of Death who can offer different travel packages to the recently diseased.
Deceased.
Based on how morally good their lives were, the best of which is a ticket on the number 9, a train that carries souls to the 9th Underworld.
That's our top-of-the-line express train. It shoots straight to the 9th Underworld, the land of eternal rest, in 4 minutes instead of 4 years.
Which is not only the time span of this game, but also apparently how long it takes to get out of the 8th Underworld. This is how we meet our protagonist, Manuel Calavera.
Manny suits me fine.
A salesman who's fallen from his old glory days when he had the world at his fingertips, now only able to sell pathetic packages to people undeserving of golden tickets. Manny is your typical noir protagonist, right at home with Fred McMurray's Walter Neff from Double Indemnity, or even Humphrey Bogart's Rick Blaine from Casablanca. Both inspirations, I might add, but he's definitely more morally good. He's a civil servant trapped in limbo until he's paid off his debts from a possibly bad life, one that he claims not to know about, so he's a good guy with a somewhat shady past. It's like the characters in Beetlejuice who are workers due to taking their own lives. Oh, and he always smokes, even when you don't move him for a bit. Either way, Manny is also one of my spirit animals. Not only does he have a big head and a go-nowhere position in life, death, whatever. He's also really great at throwing shade and using self-deprecating humor.
It's an ugly pile of bones, like me.
I could never be partners with someone who was so much more of a man than me.
Oh, come on. I've seen your wife.
Okay, no, the balloon twister is my true spirit animal. Seriously.
My carpal tunnel syndrome's really acting up.
But you don't have any tendons.
Yeah, well, you don't have a tongue, but that doesn't seem to shut you up now, does it?
You teach me how to do that?
Well, since you're a beginner, why don't you practice the first step?
Which is?
Blow.
Lousy bony fingers.
Part of Manny's lasting appeal is the inspired performance by Tony Plana, who brings his own Spanish flavor to the role, making it charming and funny when appropriate, but also very poignant.
Bound only by the paper-thin wrapper of mortality, a soul here lies, struggling to be free, and so it shall, thanks to a bowl of bad gazpacho and a man named Calavera.
Anyway, so Manny meets and joins forces with a straight chonky orange demon, or is it dummy thick demon, named Glottis, who is basically the Baby Yoda of the game simply due to his cute yet goofily threatening appearance, namely the wide eyes and pointed teeth. Glottis, as he explains, is a demon made with only one purpose.
One skill, one desire to drive! Or to change oil and adjust timing belts if no driving jobs are open.
But he's basically a mechanic. Through some underhanded, though completely understandable efforts, Manny is not only able to get Glottis to be his driver to the land of the living. But also is able to eventually steal a client from his rival, the smarmy, slimy Domino Hurley. Now, how does Manny feel about Domino? Well,
I want to punch you in the mouth.
Oh no, not the Christmas party all over again.
Is it hard to kiss up to the boss so much when you got no lips?
Hey, I got all the lip I need. I get it from you.
now, to steal the client, they have the use of Glottis's heavily modified car, the Bone Wagon, which does sound like what every high school douchebag car nut calls his car, yes. And the client just turns out to be a good woman named Mercedes Colomar, or as she's affectionately called, Meche.
Miss Colomar.
Meche, please.
Yeah, it's the mom from Wizards of Waverly Place. Yeah, a bit random, but I thought it was interesting. Shut up! This leads Manny to suspect something off in the Department of Death when Meche, a basic saint, is unable to get a number 9 ticket like she obviously deserves, and he rightfully suspects his boss, Don Copal, and Domino of rigging things. He then meets Salvador Limones, leader of a small rebel group called the LSA, or Lost Souls Alliance, which Ava, Don Copal's sarcastic secretary, is part of. Here, he learns that the DoD has a connection to a criminal kingpin.
Some fatty in a fez.
Who is the fat man, I wonder? And how does he fit into this sinister puzzle?
Named Hector Le Mans, who is obviously modeled after actor Sidney Greenstreet's Casper Gutman from 1941's The Maltese Falcon. Because of Manny's actions, Glottis is fired, which prompts him to tear out his heart. But we've all done that, am I right? Which is then taken by flying spiders!
Oh my god!
But don't worry, Glottis is fine even when I make Manny do this to him.
Okay, just give me a second to balance these doggies. Hey, Manny! What are you doing?
Outside of the entertainment value, that didn't do what I had hoped.
Also, Meche strikes out on her own, braving the dangers of the 8th Underworld. Manny then makes it his mission to find her and help her, though he denies it's out of love. It's totes out of love, though. And to close out the end of the first year, Manny and Glottis brave demon beavers, one of the most hilariously frightening ideas I've ever heard.
Demon beavers, Manny? They'll make you into a dam!
Relax, Geppetto. I'm not made of wood.
But Manny, they don't use wood.
12 seconds later.
Hey,
way!
To arrive at Rubacava, where Manny ends up taking a job as a janitor at an eatery, waiting on Meche to pass through. So, I know you've been listening and have asked, Gregorious, your mouth-breathing hillbilly voice is so enticing and sensual that I could listen for hours. But I have to know, how does this game play? Well, with it being an adventure game and one of the earliest examples that I can think of that didn't use point and click, you maneuver Manny around with tank controls. No, really. Unless you're playing the remastered version, as I did for the footage, though you can switch it to tank controls. In fact, there's a trophy for it. You can talk to nearly every character, and certain puzzles require certain dialogue. It's funny because as a kid, I was impatient and hated long conversations in video games. But now, as an adult, I'm impatient and hate long conversations in person in general, always. I'm just a fun-loving, great, socially conscious person that everybody loves being around. You can also pick up items, examine them, and pull them out to use them, all of which involves you reaching into your jacket, a detail that I love. Now, are some of the puzzles the hated moon logic puzzles, which typically hurt a lot of adventure games of the time? Not really. For this game, they're fairly logical.
Looks like a turkey baster.
Look, you broke it. Now it won't shut. Nemazogya, hold still. What are you, dead?
That's basically all for how to play, really. Luckily, while there isn't a cursor to use to, point, Manny will typically aim his head at something to look at, take, or someone to talk to. It's not perfect, but it works pretty well. So, where did we leave off with Manny? Oh, right. In year 2, which is probably my favorite of the 4, we get a heavy Casablanca influence. Not only does Manny dress in a white tux and basically look like Bogart if we were to dig him up now. Oh, what? Too soon? But he also owns a casino/nightclub called the Calavera Cafe. This year kicks off with Manny learning that Meche has been taken on a ship by Domino, which prompts Manny to give chase. He learns from Velasco, the salty harbor master, that in order to become a sailor on a ship leaving out so that he can pursue Meche, he needs 3 things. To ensure that Seaman Naranja, a sailor on shore leave, has to be replaced, that Glottis has CB equipment needed for repairs and the like. Yes, the equipment comes from literal monstrosities that are bees that work on boats. And lastly, that he has a union card. Manny has to use his wiles to get these things and does so by provoking a worker uprising using communist literature.
You know, I always thought bees came in 2 colors, yellow and black. But you look all red to me, my friend.
Blackmailing a murderous and sleazy lawyer named Nick Virago.
How's tricks, Nick? Nah.
Who's having an affair with the local casino owner's girlfriend, Olivia. More on her later. Basically faking Naranja's death by knocking him out and dumping his dog tags on a corpse. And ultimately, losing his casino. Oh, and we get yet another Casablanca reference from the sleazy Chowchilla Charlie, who is basically Peter Lorre, and is not only who you have to get your forged union card from, but is also tied to the whole double-in ticket conspiracy. Sort of.
So now I have to come here, Manny, which I love.
Also during this year, Glottis hilariously reveals that he has a drinking problem.
I don't know. I try to stay away from that place.
Really? Why?
'Cause of my problem.
Glottis? Compadre?
I don't say that because I find alcoholics hilarious, not by a long stretch, but the way he gets so belligerent makes it funny. As does the crap that he and Manny put a snooty waiter named Leroy
Raul
through.
Hello? Hello out there? Could somebody please open the door? I seem to have locked myself in this teeny tiny room. I am actually very claustrophobic, so if somebody, s'il vous plaît, oh, let me out of here, immediately! Oh, wow.
What a dick.
It also has one of the most frustrating puzzles ever until you learn the pattern where you have to use a forklift to stop a moving elevator by moving the fork under the door to catch the ceiling of a secret opening. Seriously, it made me want to smash that compact laptop when I was a kid. Now, while this is a weird little story about the afterlife, I haven't mentioned one particular aspect that is pretty disturbing, and that's how the skeletons can die. Again. See, they use guns loaded with what's called sproutella, which is a chemical that causes spontaneous growth of plant life, namely flowers, to sprout from the body and engulf them in leaves and petals.
There's nothing more horrible than the bite of the sprouter. Its deadly stinger spreads a green disease through every calcified pore on your body, leaving you veined with roots and flocked with grass, steadily growing thicker and thicker until you crash and bloom out in a horrifying bouquet of pain and fragrant suffering, screaming until your mouth fills with petals and your nostrils shoot out thorny stems, and the bulbs sprout in your eyes, leaving you nothing but a patch of wild flowers on the ground swarming with butterflies.
Basically, you turn into a flower bush. Kind of horrifying if you think of it from a body horror perspective, especially when flowers sprout from certain characters' eye sockets, but yeah. There are other methods of death in the game, sure, but that's the major one. So, Manny, of course, gets what he needs and sets sail, going into year 3. Now, I'll try and sum up the last 2 years as simply as possible. The video's getting a bit long, and honestly, the last 2 years are the weakest to me. They also seem to be the shortest. Not to say that they're bad, they're not. I just prefer year 1 and 2 more. Manny ends up becoming captain of the ship he's on until it's infiltrated by goons working for Le Mans. Remember him? They sprout everyone on board and try to sink the boat with a bomb, but Manny and Glottis escape, only to sink to the bottom of the ocean, where they meet an annoyingly funny character named Chipito, who's been trapped under the sea for a long time, and has sucky instincts for direction. Manny and Glottis end up pulling, well, kind of a douchey move and use old Chipito as a lantern to keep out of reach of sea monsters, discovering a supposed treasure called the Pearl, where apparently many skeletons end up vanishing on their way to the Ninth Underworld. Turns out this is a trap that's guarded by a giant octopus that kidnaps the skeletons and carries them in a submarine. Yes, weird, I know, but remember what I said about Tim Schafer? To be used as slave labor at a coral mine located at the literal edge of the world. Yeah, so flat earthers could probably use this game as proof of their beliefs. Run by none other than Domino Hurley.
Domino!
Once Manny and Glottis arrive at the mine, Manny finally crosses paths with Meche, who's been kept prisoner and claims to have changed for the worse, despite caring for little winged skeletons called Angelitos. And Domino drops Glottis to his doom over the edge. Manny later does some puzzle stuff to get a gun, which Meche takes and tries to use against Domino before getting locked up, and basically here's what happens. Manny learns the scheme between Le Mans and Domino. Domino would get clients with good souls, put their double-in tickets in a secret fund, send the hapless skeletons to the Pearl where they'd be forced to work at the mine and never be found, and he and Le Mans would sell the tickets for a profit. Yeah. Manny also finds out that Glottis is alive! He landed on a ship that didn't completely fall off of the edge, and he gets the ship into the ocean complete with some coral grinders, you know, to grind coral. And probably most importantly, he makes up with Meche and learns that forgeries of double-in tickets are being made. But for what purpose? The year finally closes when Domino's ego gets the better of him and he realizes that Manny and the others are escaping. So, on the octopus's submarine, he and Manny have a showdown that ends like this.
Just look what could happen to you!
Finally, year 4! Glottis is dying because he hasn't driven in so long, instead going with Manny to try and lead those who were kept as Domino's slaves to the Ninth Underworld. And, on top of this, Manny learns that no one can go through to the afterlife because they don't have their tickets. You know, the ones stolen by Le Mans. It's also demonstrated what happens to those who buy tickets that don't belong to them. Manny and Meche promise to get the tickets back by traveling all the way back to El Morro, the city in Year 1, and stop Le Mans. They work with little demon versions of Glottis who revere him because he's
so large,
and get him on a rocket sled, the speed bringing him back. But of course, he reacts like me to anything new that I don't want to do.
Manny, I'm frightened!
And summarily screws the pooch, landing them in Rubicava. But hey, they get to retrieve the bone wagon. But the biggest mystery is who rigged it with explosives.
She's been
booby-trapped.
By who? Who?
Bitch, is you blind?
Manny uses some gross ingenuity to solve the puzzle, and they bring Olivia, yeah, I'll explain her in a minute, I haven't forgotten, with them to what's now Nuevo Mero, basically undead Las Vegas, and are captured by Salvador's now massive network of spies. Now, in short, Manny works to get closer to Hector and retrieve the tickets by manipulating a psychotic botanist. Yeah, since Sproutella is plant-based, botanists are arm dealers in this world. A cool twist. Eventually learning that the Fat Man was hoarding them to help him get to the Ninth Underworld, which is kind of pointless since we saw what happened to the others before. Yeah, remember the Hell Train with the big demon face? Manny gets the tickets, but the rendezvous to get them to the LSA goes wrong because of Olivia. Now, she's this hipster beat poet type that has bad taste in men.
No, I have a taste for really bad men. There's a difference.
Oh right, sorry. And while Nick was bad, she's now with Hector and has sprouted Salvador. Well, everything but his head.
Hola, Manuel.
No! God, please, no! No!
So, we finally reached the climax of the story, but before I finish it, so far I've said a lot about the look and voice acting in this game, but one thing that I haven't talked about is the music. Now, I love me a good movie/video game soundtrack, and the music by Peter McConnell, a mainstay of both LucasArts and Schafer's own Double Fine Productions, is perhaps one of the best adventure game soundtracks I've ever heard. Much of it has a flavor that is a combination of Latin and old school jazz, and while I have a love-hate relationship with the latter, I still love the music in Grim Fandango and find myself humming a number of the tunes often. Here are just a few of my favorites.
know you were bopping your head when you was listening to that, don't you lie.
So, Manny has his final showdown with Le Mans at a greenhouse that is surrounded with plant life that is all the corpses of those he's killed. Really, game? That's the darkest freaking thing in this. Anyway, Hector shoots Manny with slow-acting Sproutella.
How convenient.
And he uses a lame pun.
Manny, where are you going? You've got some time, you know, before you have to leave. Get it? Leave!
But Manny is able to survive with some liquid nitrogen he took earlier in Rubicava from Toto, the Scrimshaw artist. Scrimshaw is the etching of images into bone or ivory, so it's their form of tattooing. Cool, huh? We also have a strangely heartfelt and sad moment when Salvador goes out like a true revolutionary, but not before saying,
"Farewell, my friend!"
And he takes out the double-crossing Olivia.
Viva la revolución! Ah!
Viva la revolución, compadre.
Manny is left with Le Mans and can't take him mano a mano, so he pumps the sprinkler system with Sproutella darts and Le Mans, well, explodes? Because it's a lot of Sproutella? Or because he's fat?
It's because he's fat, isn't it?
And there you go. Manny defeats the villain, saves everyone, gets a double-in ticket as compensation, and is allowed to leave for the final afterlife with Meche after a sweet goodbye to Glottis. The end. Now, before I get to complaints, I want to mention one of my absolute favorite aspects of this game that I haven't talked about yet. And I can say this about other LucasArts games, or, well, Tim Schafer games too. What I love is that there are numerous instances of foreshadowing and the like throughout the game.
What I mean is that the majority of lines of dialogue aren't just offhand remarks or one-off jokes, nor are they all just exposition. There are a number of lines or situations that hint at things later and have some sort of payoff. I'll give you 2 examples of what I mean.
In year 1, Manny talks to Ava and says that he knows she works for another man besides their boss, Copal, but she momentarily gets nervous.
Come on, I know you work for another man besides Don.
What are you talking about?
Of course he means Domino, but after Manny gets detained for stealing Dom's commission, it's revealed that she works for Salvador, so she did work for someone else.
So you're not really a secretary?
I'm a spy, Manny.
Well, that's the last time we used that temp agency.
Okay, that was an easy one. I'll give you one that has a bit more stretch in it. In year 2, Lola, the photographer who snaps a photo of Olivia, who's dating casino owner Max, messing around with the lawyer Nick, is found by Manny after Nick sprouts her. Mortally wounded, she tells Manny to warn Olivia to change her tastes in men before she ends up like her.
You just want Olivia for me. Tell her to improve her taste in men, or she'll end up just like me.
Now, all the way in year 4, Olivia ends up sprouted, albeit ironically, due to her connections to Hector Le Mans. That, ladies and gentlemen, is just good writing. I could list more, but I dare you to check the game out and see what you pick up on.
I know it's a minor detail, but as a writer and teacher myself, I do appreciate these little things.
So, negatives. In all honesty, the only gripes I have to touch on are rudimentary, the controls and the graphics. The former is definitely more of a hit to the tank controls, but even in the remastered version and its updated scheme, Manny can sometimes be hard to control, like a van on an ice rink with wheels coated in Vaseline. He can venture into transitional areas too easily and sometimes get stuck on walls. For the graphics, well, while I said earlier that I prefer the remaster, namely with how it smooths out the rough edges and adds shading and shadows where appropriate, this is one that could stand a full overhaul. I'm not someone who needs perfect graphics in my games, as I mentioned in my Max Payne video, but hey, that one's getting a full remake, so maybe if I wait, this will too? Probably not. Still, neither of these gripes take away from the game in any regard, really.
So, if you've been paying attention at all, I obviously can't recommend Grim Fandango enough for those who haven't experienced it. It's certainly one of my favorites, and it's a game that I'll never fully grow tired of.
Sure, it's obviously geared to the more leisurely crowd, being an adventure game and one that you can't fail, but it can be a bit confusing at times with its puzzles in regards to what to do next, which might expend just a tiny bit of brain power. It's not a Call of Duty game or anything, so this might not be your thing. But if you like a good story, especially a noir story with a heaping helping of Mexican culture, vibrant aesthetics, superb voice acting, well-rounded well-crafted characters, memorable one-liners and jokes, charm, drama, and a sprinkling of macabre weirdness, then give this one a try if you haven't. What are you waiting for? A ticket on the number 9?
And maybe you can bond with your significant other over it like I did and find your Manny or Meche. My wife certainly found her Gladys.
The ladies liked me just fine.
Nah, who am I kidding? She found her balloon twister, okay?
Yeah. Twist this, alright?
Well, I guess that about wraps this up. Thank you for joining me on my glorious return to videos like these, and thank you for your patience. And now I'll be getting to work on the next one. No hints this time like last video because it may cause another year-long delay. So I will say this. Next video I'm going to be looking at a movie and its remake. You'll see. That's all for me. Later.